Rose Pemberton knew three things that morning. First, the roof was leaking. Second, her father's lawyer had cried the night before. Third, the carriage of the Duke of Wexford was standing at the end of the street, and the man himself was waiting for permission to enter. All three were bad. But the third was the strangest. They had no servants anymore. Those had left the previous month, with polite farewells, quietly swallowing their unpaid wages. Rose opened the door herself. James Ashford, Duke of Wexford, stood at the threshold, tall, in a dark coat, his hat in his hand. His face was not what Rose had expected. It was not arrogant. It was simply tired. A deep, bone-settling exhaustion. He looked. Rose looked back. "Miss Pemberton," he said. "Your Grace," said Rose. She was surprised her voice emerged at all. She let him in. What else could she do? She could hardly leave him outside. The street had already seen him. They moved into the sitting room. Rose offered him a seat. James sat. Rose sat. Between them stood a small, cracked marble table. Upon it, an old book, a cold teacup, a candle from yesterday. James did not look at these. He looked at Rose. "I will speak plainly," said James. "Please do," said Rose. A moment passed. "I am aware of your family's situation," he said. "The debts, the lawyer, the roof." Something in Rose sank. He knew about the roof, too. "This is not an offer," said James. His voice was level, no apology in it, no discomfort, only fact. "It is an arrangement." "I am listening," said Rose. "I am engaged," said James. "Lady Cecilia Vane. I have wanted to end that engagement for 2 years now. But Cecilia's family is powerful, and so is mine. No one wishes to make the first move." He paused. "You may be that first move." Rose understood, quickly, as she always did. "If you are seen with me," she said, "Cecilia will withdraw." "Or her family will," said James. "It makes no difference. The result is the same." And in return, James drew a paper from his pocket and placed it on the table. Rose looked, numbers, dates, signatures, her father's debts, all of them, to the last coin. "I will settle them," said James, "in full." Rose did not take the paper. She only looked. Her mind worked quickly, as it always did, both her greatest strength and her greatest flaw. She calculated, weighed, saw. If the debts were cleared, her father would be saved. The house would be saved. The roof could be repaired. The lawyer would stop crying. And in return, she would be seen for a few weeks with a duke. "How long?" Rose asked. "1 season," said James. "Perhaps less. Cecilia is impatient. She will understand quickly." "And afterward?" "Afterward, everyone goes their separate way." Rose considered. "No one will know the truth?" "No one." She turned to the window. The street was gray, always gray now. Or perhaps it had always been so, and she had only failed to notice before. The neighbors' children were playing on the pavement. A vendor shouted somewhere in the distance. An ordinary morning. And yet this morning, a duke had come, placed a paper upon her table, and the only thing he asked of Rose Pemberton was, "Be cheap." The word struck in her mind. It had not been spoken. James had not said it. But it was there, in the air, on that table, within that paper. "You are cheap. That is why you are suitable." Rose drew a breath. She picked up the paper. "I have one condition," she said. James raised an eyebrow, slightly, but He did. My father must not know, said Rose. He must not know how the debts were settled. You will say an inheritance appeared, a distant relative, something. But he will not know of this arrangement. James studied her for a moment. Why? Rose held the paper. Because, she said, my father is a good man, and good men should not know certain things. Silence. James looked, long, measuring. Rose was not accustomed to being looked at like that. Most men did not see her. James did. It unsettled her. Then James inclined his head. Very well, he said. He stood, took his hat, walked to the door. Rose rose as well. At the door, James turned. Friday, he said. Hyde Park. Afternoon. I will send a carriage. Very well, said Rose. James left. Rose closed the door. She held the paper, tightly, until her fingers whitened. There was only one voice in her mind. Her own, calm, flat, warning itself. This is an arrangement, nothing more. It will be nothing more. Then another voice came, smaller, more foolish, more dangerous. But it had eyes. It had looked, truly looked. Rose shut that voice away. She tried to. But some voices, small, foolish, dangerous voices, grow louder from where they are buried. Friday came. The carriage arrived precisely when it had been said it would. Black, polished, the Wexford crest upon its door. The neighbors watched from their windows. Rose did not see them, but she felt it. She stepped inside. Hyde Park was crowded that afternoon. James was waiting, on horseback. When Rose's carriage approached, he dismounted, helped her down. His hand was cold, even through the glove. Are you ready? He asked. Yes, said Rose. They walked. For the first 10 minutes, James did not speak. Neither did Rose. But the silence was uncomfortable. Two people walking side by side in the middle of Hyde Park, in full view of everyone, saying nothing, and the silence did not look real. Rose noticed it. So did James. Which concert did you attend last week? Said James. Rose blinked. What? If anyone asks, said James, we must appear to have attended a concert together. Details matter. Rose understood. It was a performance, nothing more. I like Bach, she said. There was a fine concert at St. James last month. It was excellent, said James. He had never attended, but that hardly mattered. Then someone did come. Lady Morton, elderly, curious, the quickest tongue in London. Two women accompanied her. Wexford, she said. She stopped. Her eyes fell on Rose, up and down, then down and up. James stopped. Rose stopped. Lady Morton, said James, his voice even. And who is this? Said Lady Morton. She asked politely, but the politeness was hollow. Miss Rose Pemberton, said James, daughter of Lord Pemberton. Lady Morton's brows lifted. Pemberton? She thought. Remembered. Ah, yes. Ah, yes, said a great deal. Poor but noble, invisible yet known. Accounts that existed but could not be settled. Rose smiled. Lady Morton smiled. Both knew the emptiness of that smile. James intervened. A small remark, the sort that disperses tension. Lady Morton moved on. The women with her followed. Rose exhaled. Well done, said James. What did I do? Smiled, said James. You did not tremble. Rose studied him. Why should I tremble? She said. James looked at her. Something passed through his eyes. Rose could not name it. They walked on. That week, they met 3 times. Hyde Park, a dinner, an exhibition. Each time, someone saw them. Each time, the news spread. London's oldest, most reliable method, from ear to ear, from drawing room to drawing room, from letter to letter. The Duke of Wexford is being seen with someone. Who is the girl? Pemberton. Those Pembertons? At the end of the 2nd week, Rose received an invitation. Lady Ashton's dinner. Not her name alone, Miss Rose Pemberton and her companion. Her companion. It was James. Rose held the invitation. For a long time. Because last month such an invitation would not have come, nor the year before. Rose Pemberton, poor but noble, invisible yet known, had always been at the very end of invitation lists. Or not on them at all. Now she was. Her father asked at dinner, "Where did this invitation come from?" "Lady Ashton," said Rose, "we are acquainted." "Are you seeing the Duke of Wexford?" Rose did not set down her fork. "We have met a few times," she said, amicably. Her father looked at her, long, concerned, with that mixture of love and worry fathers possess. "Rose," he said, "that man is engaged." "I know." "Then, father." Rose looked at him. "Everything is well." Everything was not well. It merely looked as though everything was well, and that was different, because with each passing day, James felt less like an arrangement. He was still distant, still cold, still careful with every word he chose. But sometimes something slipped. It had happened at the exhibition. They had stood before a painting, old, dark, a storm-tossed sea. As Rose looked, she had made a small observation, really meant only for herself. James had stopped, turned, looked at her, truly looked, with those tired eyes, from within that bone-deep weariness. "How did you see that?" he had said. "What?" "In the painting," said James. "The boat within the storm. Everyone looks at the storm. You looked at the boat." Rose had not answered. But that look stayed with her. It returned at night. It was the first thing that came to her in the morning. Everyone looks at the storm. You looked at the boat, and that was why it was dangerous. Because Rose Pemberton, clever, practical, careful Rose Pemberton, had not managed to silence that small, foolish voice. On the contrary, it had grown. That week, she saw Cecilia for the first time. At a gathering, Rose had received the invitation. She would attend with James. Everything was ordinary. Then Cecilia entered. The room changed. Rose felt it. The shift in the air, sudden, physical. People turned, voices lowered, and Cecilia knew how to enter a room. Tall, golden-haired, in a gown of midnight blue. Beautiful, truly beautiful. Rose could not deny it. But her beauty was cold, like glass, bright, sharp, capable of cutting those who passed through it. Her eyes swept the room, found James, then found Rose. She smiled. Something in Rose dropped, because this smile was not like Lady Morton's, polite and empty. This was different. This was I have seen you smile, I have measured you, and I have already finished you. James's hand touched Rose's arm, lightly, a warning. "Do not look," he said, low, for Rose alone. "She already has," said Rose. James did not reply, but his hand did not leave. That night, on the carriage ride home, Rose looked out the window. London was dark, its usual darkness, with its lamps and smoke. Cecilia's smile was in her mind, and James's hand, side by side, one cold, one warm, both dangerous. Rose closed her eyes. "This is an arrangement," she told herself. "Nothing more." But Cecilia's eyes had told her something else. "You want something from me, girl, and we both know what it is." Rose did not sleep that night. Morning came. She rose, went downstairs, poured tea, and she admitted it to no one, not aloud, only within herself, quietly. "The arrangement has changed. I do not know when, but it has." The invitation came from Lady Forsyth, a tea gathering, small, select, 12 women. Rose's name stood second on the list. A month ago, it would not have been there. That had changed now. James had not sent the invitation. Rose had asked. He did not know. Which meant London was now inviting Rose of its own accord. That was a good thing, or so she thought. When she entered the drawing room, Cecilia was in the corner, pink this time. Not the blue ice of the previous evening. Today she was warm, soft, almost innocent. In that moment, Rose understood that Cecilia knew how to inhabit any color. Her eyes found Rose. They lit. "You came," those eyes said. "I have been waiting for you." Rose took her tea. She spoke with a woman named Vivian, cheerful, harmless, talking about her hair. Rose listened, smiled, appeared entirely normal. Cecilia did not approach at once. She waited, with patience, with skill. She waited for the other women to disperse. She waited for Rose to be alone. Then she came. "Miss Pemberton." Her voice was sweet, truly sweet, and that was the worst part. Rose turned. "Lady Cecilia," a curtsy, returned, polite. Cecilia sat beside her, uninvited, effortlessly, as though she had always been meant to sit there. "I wished to see you," said Cecilia, "for quite some time." "Did you?" said Rose. "Of course." She lifted her tea. "I was curious about the woman James has been seeing." Rose stilled. Something tightened inside her, but nothing showed. She managed that. "Has he spoken of me?" Cecilia laughed, light, brief. "Not at all," she said. "James never speaks, but his silence says something, does it not?" Rose did not reply. Cecilia continued, her voice still soft, still gentle, every word wrapped in silk. "I know your family," she said. "The Pembertons are an old house. You have had difficult years. Everyone knows. No one says." She inclined her head. "I respect that, truly." Rose waited, because it was not finished. "I find you quite charming," said Cecilia. Her tone did not change. Her eyes did not change. Her smile did not change. But something came, after the sentence, beneath the sweetness, beneath the silk. "I do hope this little game does not prove expensive for you." Silence. Teaspoons clinked somewhere in the distance. Someone laughed in another corner. London went on. In that moment, Rose felt many things. First, cold, sudden, physical, running down from her neck, then heat, rising to her face, betraying her, then both at once, colliding. Cecilia's eyes were on her, waiting, precisely for this, for the flush, the tremor, the tears, waiting to see, to know, to be certain. Breakable. Rose set down her teacup. Slowly, without a sound, she looked at Cecilia and smiled, her own smile, neither empty nor cold, simply roses. "Thank you for your advice," she said. "You are most kind." She rose, curtsied, turned, walked, 10 steps to the door. With each step, she held her back straight. With each step, she concealed her smile, no longer truly a smile, but she concealed it all the same. With each step, she felt Cecilia's eyes on her back. She stepped through the door, into the corridor, stopped, leaning against the wall. No one was there. She looked at her hands. They were trembling. Slightly, but unmistakably. The game. Cecilia knew. She knew everything. The arrangement, the debts, why Rose was here. Or she guessed, and that was worse, because she guessed correctly. And that word, expensive, it was a warning, wrapped in politeness, sweetness, silk, but a threat. Withdraw, or I will, and you will lose far more. Rose pushed herself off the wall, stepped outside. The air was cold. It helped. It struck her face, took away the flush, steadied her hands. She walked. When she reached home, her father was in his study. Rose went upstairs, entered her room, closed the door, sat, and cried. Not for long. Short, angry tears, the kind directed at oneself. Not for Cecilia, not for what she had said, for herself. Because Cecilia was right. This was a game. And Rose, clever, practical, careful Rose, had felt something real within it. That was foolish. That would be costly. She wiped her face. Rose. She rose, went to the window, looked out. The street was gray, as always. She thought. Cecilia had meant to frighten her, and she had succeeded, denying that would be dishonest. But Cecilia had done something else as well, without meaning to, with that sweet voice and silken threat. She had shown Rose exactly where she stood. You are in the game, but you are also the one playing it. Then you choose how to play. The next morning, a note arrived from James. Friday evening, Lady Ashton's dinner. I will collect you. J.A. Rose read the note, set it down, wrote her reply. I shall be ready. Nothing more, because Rose Pemberton would not withdraw, not from Cecilia, not from herself, and not from that look in James Ashford's eyes, not from that look at all. Friday evening, the dinner was good, the food was good, the house elegant, the company polite. Rose laughed at the proper moments, spoke the proper amount, gave nothing too much to anyone. James was beside her, as always, distant, as always, careful. But Rose now read that distance differently. James was protecting something. She did not yet know whether it was himself, Rose, or both. The dinner ended. When they stepped outside, the rain had begun. Sudden, hard, one of London's unforgiving rains. The carriage was waiting, but in the dash toward it, both were soaked. Rose's shoulders damp, James's hat darkened. They climbed inside. The carriage moved. 10 minutes later, it stopped. The driver stepped down, came to the door. "Sir," he said, "an accident at the bridge. The road is blocked." James looked out. Darkness, rain, nothing visible. "How long?" "Unknown, sir. An hour, perhaps more." James turned, looked at Rose. Rose looked back. They both knew, at this hour, in this rain, waiting in an open carriage for an hour was impossible. "There is an inn nearby," said the driver. "The Crown, a good one." The Crown was small, stone walls, low ceilings, a fire burning in the hearth, small and warm. A few tables, a few patrons, an old man dozing in the back corner. James entered. Rose followed. They were both wet, water dripping from Rose's hair, James's coat darkened by the rain. They sat at a corner table. Wine came. James had ordered it. Rose did not object. The warmth of the fire arrived slowly, first to the hands, then to the face. They were silent. But this silence was different. Not the calculated silence of Hyde Park. Not the careful silence of Lady Ashton's dinner. This silence was simply two people in a small inn with rain outside. No one who knew them. "Cecilia found you," said James. It was not a question. Rose was surprised. She did not show it, but she was. "How did you know?" "Your face," said James. "You were different after Lady Forsyth's invitation." Rose looked at her wine. "She was at the tea," she said. "We spoke." "What did she say?" Rose hesitated, just a moment. Then she spoke. Because she was tired, because the inn was warm, and the rain was outside. And tonight she wanted something to be real. "She called it a game," said Rose. "She said it would prove expensive for me." James's face did not change, but his hand, resting on the table, closed slightly. Not into a fist, just closed. "I am sorry," he said. Rose looked at him. "For what?" "For placing you in this position. I accepted the arrangement." "Yes." He looked at her. "But Cecilia, I created her." Silence. The fire cracked. The rain did not relent. Rose had not expected that sentence. I created Cecilia. No explanation, no defense, simply stated. "How?" she asked. James lifted his wine. Did not drink, held it. 2 years ago, he said, my family deemed Cecilia suitable. I did not object. He paused. I never learned how to object. Rose waited. James continued, his voice low, directed not to the room, but to the table. Cecilia is intelligent, he said. That must be said. She is intelligent, and she knows what she wants, but what she wants. He stopped. What she wants is not me. It is the Wexford title, the Wexford house, the Wexford lands, the Wexford name. And you, James looked at her. I am merely the instrument. Rose heard that and recognized something within it, the same thing, in different words. James was an instrument for Cecilia. Rose was an instrument for James. But here, in this small inn, beneath the rain, They were simply people. "What have you ever wanted?" Rose asked. James was taken aback. It showed, and that was rare. When something showed on James's face, it was real. "What do you mean?" "Your family wanted Cecilia," said Rose. "Cecilia wanted the title. And you, what did you want?" James did not answer for a long time. He looked at the fire, at his wine, then at Rose. "I do not know," he said. It was honest. So honest it made something inside Rose falter. "I did not know either," said Rose. She spoke for herself, not for him. "For a long time. Then I realized I had given up wanting. Wanting is expensive, and we had already spent everything." James looked at her and smiled. A real smile, small, the first of its kind. Rose stilled, because that smile was not tired. That bone-deep exhaustion was gone from his face in that moment. It simply was. It existed. It was real. "At the exhibition," said James, "you saw the boat." "You remembered," said Rose. "I remembered everything." The sentence lingered in the air. The fire crackled again. Rose lifted her wine, not to drink, but to give her hands somewhere to go. Outside, the rain still fell. Inside, something had begun. Small, fragile, dangerous. And this time, Rose did not silence that small, foolish voice. She let it remain. An hour later, the driver returned. "The road is clear, sir." James stood. Rose stood. Coats were donned. They walked to the door. The outside was still wet, but the rain had softened. They entered the carriage. Halfway through the journey, James spoke. Rose, her name, for the first time, not Miss Pemberton. Rose. She turned. James was looking out the window. "Cecilia will do something else," he said. "I wanted you to know." "What will she do?" "I do not know," said James. "But it is not finished. Cecilia never leaves anything unfinished." Rose absorbed this. London passed outside. Lamps, wet pavements, night. "I am ready," she said. James turned, looked at her. "Are you certain?" Rose met his gaze. "No," she said, "but I am ready." James looked at her for a long time, then turned back to the window. But at the corner of his mouth, the trace of that small, real, first-seen smile remained. When Rose entered the house, it was late. Her father was asleep. The house was silent. She climbed the stairs, entered her room. She looked at herself in the mirror. Wet hair, flushed cheeks, eyes wide awake. Cecilia's voice returned to her mind. "I do hope this little game does not prove expensive for you." Rose looked at her reflection and thought, "Perhaps it will." But some things are meant to be costly. The dress arrived in the morning, a large white box. No name on it, only the Wexford seal, small, in the corner. Molly opened it, then stopped, then called for Rose. Rose came downstairs, looked. Midnight blue silk. Simple, yet heavy. The weight of the fabric was evident before one even touched it. The sort of dress that would not disgrace a woman in any drawing room in London. Neither excessive nor lacking. Exact. Rose reached out, not to touch it, only to confirm that it was real. It was. There was a note inside the box. One line, in James's hand. Tonight is Wexford's grandest ball. Be ready. J.A. Rose read the note, then read it again. Be ready. It carried two meanings, one for the ball, the other for Cecilia. That evening, James came. When Rose stepped to the door, he was standing beside the carriage. He had not come inside. He was waiting outside. When he saw her, he looked. He looked for a long time. Then he looked away. But that look, Rose kept it somewhere inside herself, stored it, set it aside for later. The ball was held in the great house on Grosvenor Square. The lights were visible from a distance, every window, the entrance, the gardens. Music spilled into the night, strings, the finest orchestra in London. The carriage stopped. James stepped down, offered his hand. Rose took it. When they entered, London turned. Eyes turned. Everywhere, from every corner, every age. Rose felt it. She always did. But tonight it was different. Tonight she wore midnight blue silk, and James stood beside her, and when the eyes turned, there was no shrinking within her. There was something else, something different. The dancing began. James danced with Rose. The first dance, the one everyone saw, the one everyone counted. James danced well. So did Rose. The distance between them was proper. The placement of hands was proper. Everything was proper. But once James looked. In the middle of the dance, in the midst of the music, once he looked. And once Rose looked. And in that moment, what passed between them did not follow any rule. The dance ended. People dispersed, gathered, took drinks, laughed. James was drawn aside, an older lord, important, someone he needed to speak with. He glanced at Rose. 5 minutes, he said. Very well, said Rose. James left. Rose took a glass of champagne, moved beside a column, a place where backs were turned, where one could observe without being seen. Rose liked such places. She had spent her life watching London from them. She watched the dancers, the conversations, the laughter, and then she watched Cecilia. At the center of the room, this time in red, golden hair, a red gown, a smile that seemed to gather the light of the room into itself. Her eyes found Rose, and this time the smile changed. It had found its purpose. Cecilia walked directly, not politely, directly. 2 women followed her, whether knowingly or not, Rose could not tell. She stopped, in front of Rose. Miss Pemberton, her voice was sweet, always sweet. How lovely you look this evening. Lady Cecilia, said Rose. That dress. Cecilia inclined her head, looked. It seems familiar. From Wexford's tailor, perhaps? That corner of the room fell silent. A small silence. 5, 6 people. But enough. Rose did not answer. Cecilia continued. James has always been generous, she said, still sweet. Particularly, she paused, smiled. Particularly with certain kinds of women. One of the women beside her coughed. The other looked away, embarrassed or amused, somewhere in between. Something in Rose sank. The cold came down her spine, sudden as always. But this time, something else came with it. Anger, clean, burning, unwilling to be swallowed. "Certain kinds," said Cecilia, lowering her voice just enough, though those nearby still heard. "That is, how shall I put it?" She turned her glass. "Cheap." The word hung in the air. The music continued. Someone laughed in the distance. The lights burned bright, but in that corner, 5 or 6 people had heard, and in London, 5 or 6 people were enough for a week. The champagne in Rose's hand grew cold, or perhaps her hands did, both at once. Cecilia waited, calm, smiling, waiting for the answer, waiting for the tremor, the tears, the break in the voice. And then Rose heard a voice behind her. James. She did not know when he had come, how he had come, but he was there. Behind her, one step back. He had heard. All eyes turned to him, Cecilia, the women beside her. Cecilia's smile did not change. "James," she said, "just in time." Rose looked at him. A moment passed, short, silent, full. And James looked at Rose, at Cecilia, at those around them. He said nothing. Rose felt it, sharp, physical, in the center of her chest. He said nothing. He stood, looked, and remained silent. Cecilia laughed, brief, triumphant, the laughter of someone who had received exactly what she expected. "A lovely ball," she said. "Good evening to you both." She turned, walked away. The women followed. They remained, James and Rose, 2 steps between them, a silence. Something broken. Rose set down her champagne glass. On the table, the sound sharp. She did not look at James. "Good evening," she said. She walked. This time, it was not 10 steps to the door, far more. The grand hall, the crowd, the music, the lights. Everything was misplaced tonight. Everything too much. Rose walked. She held her back straight. Her eyes filled. She held them, tried to hold them, held them all the way to the door. She stepped outside. The cold air struck her face. She stood at the top of the steps, high stone steps, against the night lights of London, and then her eyes overflowed. She did not sob. They filled, spilled, traced her cheek. 2 drops, perhaps 3. Then it was over, because the anger returned, not for Cecilia, for James. He had heard. He had been there, and he had said nothing. A carriage was called. She entered. She went home. She entered her room, closed the door, removed the dress, sat on the bed. The midnight blue silk lay on the floor, still beautiful, still heavy, still marked by the Wexford seal. Rose looked at it for a long time. Then she turned, went to the desk, took a pen, wrote 1 line in a single breath. "The arrangement is over. R.P." She sealed the envelope, left it on the table, lay down, closed her eyes, and thought. One final thought before sleep. He had smiled that night at the inn. He had truly smiled. But smiling is not enough. When James received the note, it was midday. It had been sent early, left on the table before Rose slept, delivered by Molly first thing in the morning. James was in his office, papers before him, reading none of them. He opened the note. Read it. One line. The arrangement is over. R.P. He set it down, on the table, stood, walked to the window, looked out at London, the same gray, the same noise. Something was inside him, something unfamiliar. He had lost things before, money, cases, land. He knew those losses. They were heavy, but familiar. This was different. This was emptiness. He ordered the carriage. The Pemberton house was quiet that afternoon. James knocked. Molly opened, saw him, tensed. "I wish to see Miss Pemberton," said James. Molly trembled, not from fear, but from resolve. This surprised James, the resolve of a young servant. "One moment, sir." She closed the door. James waited. The door remained shut. The street was windy. He held his hat. Muted voices came from within, then silence. Then the door opened. Lord Pemberton stood there, old, tired, with kind eyes. The same eyes as Rose, same color, same attentiveness, the same way of seeing everything. "Your Grace," he said. "Lord Pemberton." James inclined his head. "I wish to speak with your daughter." Lord Pemberton looked at him for a long time. "Do not come," he said, plainly said, not rude, not harsh, simply plain. "Sir, my daughter does not wish to see you." Lord Pemberton leaned against the door, his voice lowered. "And neither do I, your Grace, to be frank." James was about to speak. Lord Pemberton continued. "Rose is a good girl," he said, "a very good one, better than I." His eyes locked onto James's. "And a good girl does not deserve to be used." The word lingered. Used. James heard it, fully heard it, every letter, every weight, because it was true. And because it was true, it was heavier still. "I wish to protect her," said James. "You did not protect her last night," said Lord Pemberton. Silence. The wind passed between them. James did not answer, because he had no answer. The night before, Cecilia had spoken. 5 or 6 people had heard, and James had stood there. He had heard, he had seen, and he had remained still. Lord Pemberton was about to close the door. "May I say one thing?" said James. Lord Pemberton waited. "You are right," said James. "In everything, you are right." He paused. "But if you tell me to go, I will go. It is Rose's decision." He stepped back. "Only know this. I have ended the arrangement as well, unilaterally. The debts will be paid, everything I promised will be done." His voice neither rose nor fell. "Without condition." Lord Pemberton looked at him for a long time. Then he closed the door. James turned, walked to the carriage, entered. It moved. When he reached home, he went to the great hall, sat, into the chair, before the fireplace. The fire was not lit. The room was cold. He sat and thought. He thought of the night at the inn, the rain, the warmth, Rose's voice. "I had given up wanting," she had said. Just like that, calm, even, without self-pity. And James had understood, because he lived the same way, for years, without wanting, only accepting, in the direction his family wanted, in the direction Cecilia wanted, in the direction everyone wanted. Rose had asked him, for the first time, "What did you want?" He had not answered that night. He had said, "I do not know." But now he did. He stood, went to his study, sat at his desk, took up a pen. He did not write at once. He waited for a long time, before the blank page, in the empty room, with the sounds of London around him. Then he wrote. It was not long. He sealed the letter, called for his valet. "Tonight, to the Pemberton house," he said. "It is to be placed in the girl's hands, not the Lord's, the girl's." The valet left. James looked at the fireplace. The fire had not yet been lit. He rose, lit it himself, knelt, placed the wood, struck the flint. The first spark did not take, nor the second. The third did. The fire began, small, hesitant, trying to grow. James watched it. That night, Rose received the letter. Molly brought it, knocked, entered, held out the envelope. "A servant left it," she said it was for you alone." Rose took it. Molly left. Rose looked at the envelope. It was James's hand. She held it for a long time, without opening it, simply holding it, feeling its weight in her hand. It was not the weight of paper, it was the weight of what lay inside. She set it on the table, lay down, closed her eyes, opened them, looked at the ceiling. No cracks here, smooth, white. Turned, looked at the table. The envelope was still there. She rose, took it, opened it. Rose. "Last night, I stood still. I should not have. I did not search for the proper words to say this. There are no proper words, I know, but it had to be said. You ended the arrangement. You are right. But the debts will remain settled. That was my promise before the arrangement, and it remains my promise after. I ask for nothing in return. Only this. When you asked me that night at the inn, when you asked what it was I wanted, I did not know the answer. Now I do. James." Rose lowered the letter, went to the window. London was night, dark, lit by lamps, filled with distant sound. There was much within her. The anger was still there, the anger from the previous night, from the moment James had remained silent. It had not faded. It would not fade with a single letter. But something else was there as well. That small, foolish, dangerous voice. Still there. Unquieted. Rose folded the letter and put it away, into a drawer, beneath other papers. Closed it. Lay down. Before sleep, she thought only one thing. Last night, he stood still. But he came. And a man who comes back can return again. The question is, will I open the door? She did not know. Not yet. James sent word to Cecilia that morning. Short, formal. "We must meet today. I will call for you." Cecilia accepted. She always did. There was always space in her calendar for James. That was part of her strategy. James knew this. It no longer mattered. In the carriage, Cecilia was cheerful. Her hat was pink, her gloves beige, her smile prepared. She spoke of an invitation, a piece of gossip, someone's new house. James listened. He did not answer. Cecilia noticed, but continued. They descended in the park, walked, along the same path, beneath the same trees, trees that had seen every season of London. James stopped. Cecilia stopped. "It must end," said James. He said it plainly, no preface, no softening. Cecilia turned, looked. "What?" "The engagement," said James. "It must end." Silence. The wind passed. Leaves stirred. Cecilia's face did not change, but her eyes did. Those glass eyes, sharp, gleaming, narrowed. "Because of the Pemberton girl," she said. "No," said James. Cecilia waited. "Because of you," said James. "Because of me, because of both of us." He paused. "We have known this for 2 years. No one simply said it." "I did not say it," said Cecilia. Her voice hardened, the sweetness gone, whatever remained revealed itself. "And neither did you." "I know." "Then why now?" "Well, because," said James, "last night I failed to stand beside a woman when I should have." Cecilia laughed, short, sharp. "For her?" she said. "That—" "Cecilia," James's voice cut through. It was not loud, but it was absolute. And Cecilia, very few in her life had ever spoken to her in that tone. She recognized it. She fell silent. "What you did last night," said James, "was unacceptable." Cecilia lifted her chin. "I spoke the truth." "No," said James, "you wielded power against a woman in front of others for the sole purpose of intimidation." He paused. "She did not deserve that." "Deserve?" Cecilia laughed again, this time bitter, carrying her own hurt. "James, that woman was a figure in your game. I was wrong," said James. "It was wrong to place her in that position. I know that. But what you did last night, that does not make you right." Cecilia looked at him for a long time, and in that look, for the first time in 2 years, James saw something. Behind the glass composure, deep within those sharp eyes, weariness, a weariness like his own. "You never loved me," said Cecilia. Her voice had lowered. No sweetness, no threat, only plain. James did not answer. "You never did," she said. "And she paused, looked out at London. "I knew, I always knew." Silence, long, heavy, containing 2 years within it. "Why did you continue?" James asked. Cecilia turned, looked at him. "Because the Wexford title," she said, "was what my father wanted." She gave a tired shrug. "And she paused. "I had given up wanting." James stilled. That sentence. He had heard it before, in another voice, another room, beneath the rain, in a small inn. "I had given up wanting." 2 women, 2 different women, the same words, and James had done the same thing to both. "I am sorry," said James. Cecilia was surprised. She showed it. "What?" "I am sorry," he repeated. "I placed you in this position as well. I should have objected 2 years ago, at the beginning. I did not." Cecilia looked at him for a long time, then turned away, looked at London, distant, gray, its usual noise. "Our lawyers will speak," she said. Her voice was even. "It will be formal." "Very well," said James. "The family, I will speak to them." Cecilia inclined her head. She walked, went to the carriage. James watched. Before she entered, she turned. Once, a final look. It was not a threat. It was weariness, and James recognized it, because he saw it in his own reflection each morning. Cecilia left. James remained in the park. There were trees, wind, London murmuring in the distance. The emptiness within him remained, but it had changed. It was a full emptiness now, the kind that grows something inside it. He knew what it was. He did not go to the carriage. He walked. The Pemberton house was 15 minutes away. James walked, no carriage, no valet, his hat held against the wind. He passed through London streets, over stone pavements, through narrow lanes. He came to the door, stopped. Yesterday, Lord Pemberton had opened it. Today, he did not know. But he had come. Not for the arrangement. That was over. Not for himself. Perhaps it was too late for that. For Rose. Only for Rose. He knocked. Molly opened. Saw him. This time, she trembled. But differently. Not as she had the day before. "Sir," she said. "Miss Pemberton," said James. "Please." Molly looked at him. She did not close the door. "One moment," she said. She left. James waited. This time, the door remained open. A small thing. But James noticed. Voices came from within. Low, brief. Then footsteps, the creak of stairs, the boards of the corridor. Then Rose appeared. She stood in the doorway. Her hair was not arranged, half loosened, the look of mourning. Her dress was simple, purple, provincial, not the midnight blue of the ball, but her eyes. Her eyes were awake. They always were. She looked at James. "I came," said James. "I see," said Rose. Silence. James let his hands fall to his sides. "Last night I stood still," he said. "I should not have. I know an apology is insufficient. I know that. But," he paused, "I could not come." Rose looked at him, did not reply. "I spoke with Cecilia this morning," said James. "It is over. It will be formal. The lawyers will speak, but it is over." "For me?" James considered. There was an easy answer. Yes, for you. Perhaps Rose wanted that, or perhaps she did not. He did not know. He chose honesty. "First for myself," he said, "for what I failed to do for 2 years. Then for you, for failing to stand beside you last night." He paused. "They are separate. Both are true." Rose looked at him for a long time. At James, the man standing at the door, without carriage, holding his hat against the wind, not the Duke of Wexford. James. "Come in," said Rose. They moved into the sitting room. Rose sat. James sat. Between them, the small cracked marble table, just as it had been the first day, the first meeting. But everything was different. "I read your letter," said Rose. "I know." I did not reply. "I know." Rose folded her hands in her lap. "You said you know what you want," she said. "In the letter." "Yes." "You did not say it." James looked at her. "I did not wish to," he said. "To say it," he paused, "might have influenced your decision, and that decision must be yours." Rose looked at him for a long time. The anger was still there, the anger from the night before. It had not passed, but something else was there as well. The night at the inn, the smile, the boat. Everyone looks at the storm. You looked at the boat. "Why did you hesitate last night?" Rose asked. James looked at her. "Because I was afraid," he said. Rose had not expected that answer. Afraid of what? James considered. Because if I had intervened, if I had tried to protect you, you might have believed it to be part of the arrangement continuing. His voice lowered. For me, the arrangement had already ended, but you did not know that. And to be misunderstood, he paused. To be misunderstood might have been worse than remaining silent. Rose absorbed this, slowly, heavily. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it real? Yes. Could both be true at once? You still should not have remained silent, said Rose. I know, said James. If it happened again, it will not, said James. I give you my word. Silence. The hearth was unlit. The room was cold. May had not yet arrived. Rose rose, went to the fireplace, knelt, placed the wood, struck the flint. James watched. The first spark did not catch, nor the second. On the third, it took. Rose rose, turned, looked at James, where he sat with that tired, changing, not yet fully transformed face. I will ask you something, said Rose. Ask. If there had been no arrangement, no debt, no Cecilia, no calculations at all, she paused. Would you still have knocked on my door? James stood, came to the table, looked at her, and that small, real smile, the one from the night at the inn, returned, this time fully, this time unhidden. I would have knocked from the very first day, he said. Rose looked at him for a long time. The fire burned behind her, small, hesitant, trying to grow. Come tomorrow, said Rose. James waited. You will find the door open. James inclined his head, turned, walked to the door. At the threshold, he paused, not turning back, only pausing. Rose. Yes? Thank you. For what? A moment passed. For opening the door, said James. This door, and for asking that question on the night at the inn. He left. The door closed. Rose remained by the hearth. The fire had grown, no longer hesitant, now real, warming the room. She extended her hands, warmed them. Her father entered, stopped, looked at Rose, looked at the fire. Was it him? Yes. He waited. And? Rose looked at the fire, thought. She thought of the night at the inn, the letter, today. She thought of last night's anger. It was still there, smaller now, but present. Perhaps it would always remain, as a small trace. Perhaps that was good. Some traces reminded. He is coming tomorrow, said Rose. Her father looked at her, then sat into the chair opposite the fire. He said nothing, but his face spoke. James came the next morning. It was past 10. The carriage was there this time, but no servant stepped down. James opened the door himself, walked forward, knocked. Rose opened. They looked at one another. It was not long, no more than a breath. I came, said James. I see, said Rose. But this time she smiled. Small, not tired. Real. James smiled as well. She let him in. That day they spoke. truly spoke. No arrangement, no calculations, no Cecilia. Just two people before the hearth of a small sitting room, with cooling tea between them. James spoke of his family, of Wexford, of the weight he had carried since childhood. Rose listened. Rose spoke of her father, of the debts, of the day she had given up wanting. James listened. Neither pitied the other. They simply listened. That was better than pity. In the afternoon, her father entered. James stood. Lord Pemberton paused, looked at them both, at James, at Rose, at the air between them. Then he sat. "Is there tea?" he asked. The three of them sat together. Her father asked, directly, kindly, but clearly, "What are your intentions, Your Grace?" James looked at him. "I wish to ask for your daughter," he said, truly, without arrangement, without calculation, simply. Lord Pemberton turned, looked at Rose. Rose looked at the fire, then back at her father. She inclined her head, a small, quiet assent. Lord Pemberton rose, looked at James, long, measuring. "Last night, after the ball," he said, "my daughter wept." James did not answer. "I wished you to know that," said Lord Pemberton. "Only that you should know." He paused. "You are welcome," he said. The engagement was quiet. No invitations, no ball, no London. Only a small dinner. Rose, her father, James. The ring was placed. Wine was poured. Her father cried. He did not hide it, wiped his face, and continued. Rose laughed. James watched. London spoke. Of course it did. Cecilia's engagement had been broken. James was engaged to the Pemberton girl. Had the Duke of Wexford lost his senses? The gossip flowed. Rose heard it. It reached her, from Lady Morton, from old invitations, from the street. She heard it and waited. Nothing inside her sank. That surprised her. One day, Vivian came, cheerful, curious, standing at the door. "You will tell me everything," she said. Rose let her in. She told her, not everything, but enough. The arrangement, the inn, the ball, the door opening. Vivian listened, then sat. "What did Cecilia say to you after the ball?" she asked. "Cheap," said Rose. Vivian's face tightened. "And James?" He was silent. "And then?" "He came," Vivian thought. "Is that enough?" she said. "That he came?" Rose considered, honestly, without seeking the easy answer. "No," she said, "not by itself." She paused. "But silence is not an answer until you understand why it was silence." And he explained. "Did you believe him?" "Yes." "Why?" Rose looked at her. "Because," she said, "on the night at the inn, he did not lie. Before the ball, before everything, he was real that night. And a person who is real once cannot be false everywhere." Vivian looked at her for a long time, then laughed. "You are clever," she said. "A little late," said Rose. They both laughed. The wedding was in June, a small church, Rose's choice. James had asked, Rose had considered, had said small. James had not objected. The guests were few. Her father, Vivian, two of James's close friends, no one else, no London. That was Rose's decision. This day was not for London. Rose woke early that morning. The weather was clear, June sunlight, real, warm. She opened the window. Birds could be heard in the garden. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her gown was simple, cream, no lace, understated. She arranged her hair herself. Molly helped, and the two of them laughed when something went wrong. Her father knocked. "Are you ready?" Rose turned, looked at him, his shirt pressed, his hair neat, his eyes bright. The debts were gone from his shoulders. She could see it. It was the posture of a man no longer carrying weight. "I am ready," she said. James was waiting in the church. He turned when Rose entered, and his face, that deep, bone-settling weariness, was gone. Not entirely. Years do not vanish in weeks, but its edges had softened. The weight in his eyes had lightened, and his gaze was on Rose, only on Rose. Rose walked, her father at her arm, through the steps, the aisle. In the final steps, he let go, fingers loosened, his arm withdrew. Rose continued. Alone. Those last steps, alone. She stopped before James. They looked at one another. The priest spoke. The words came, old, familiar. Rose heard them and did not hear them, because she was looking at James, and James was looking at her. And within that gaze, Rose saw this: the night at the inn, the rain, the fire, the door, and this man had come back to the door. Is there any objection? Silence. No one spoke. The vows were said. James first, his voice low, his eyes on Rose. Rose after, her voice came, faltering only on the first word. The ring was cold on her finger. Then it warmed. When they stepped outside, the sun was high. June warmth, real, generous, rare in London. Rose paused, felt the sun on her face, her shoulders. James stood beside her. "Are you well?" he asked. Rose thought. She thought of the ball, the word, cheap. That moment, that cold, that anger. It had not entirely passed. A trace remained. It might always remain. But carrying a trace was different from carrying the moment itself. "I am well," said Rose, then corrected herself. "I am better," she said, "and each day will be better still." James looked at her. "That is enough," he said. Her father came to them. His eyes were red. He had wept, she knew it. He had tried to hide it, but it showed. He extended his hand to James. They shook hands. Lord Pemberton looked into James's eyes, long, measuring, with a father's gaze. Then he inclined his head. Slightly, but truly, James inclined his in return. Vivian ran to them, embraced Rose, tight, real. "Are you happy?" she whispered. "Yes," said Rose. "Truly?" Rose laughed. "Truly." The carriage arrived. James held the door. Before stepping in, Rose paused, turned, to the church, to her father, to Vivian, to the June sun. She looked at them all, took them in. Then she entered. James sat beside her. The door closed. The carriage moved. London passed outside the window. Crowded, noisy, indifferent, as always. But Rose looked at it differently now. In that city, there had been a ball, and at that ball, a word had been spoken. It had hurt. It had left a mark. But in that city, there had also been an inn, and rain, and a fire, and a door. A door. "Where are we going?" Rose asked. "Wexford," said James. "The country house." "Is it large?" "Large," said James. "Too large for one." Rose looked out the window. "Is there a piano?" James looked at her. "There is," he said. "No one has played it for years." Rose smiled, turned back to the window. London was receding, slowly, street by street, building by building. The countryside began. Green, open, the fields of June. And Rose Pemberton. Poor but noble, unseen yet seeing everything. Called cheap, and yet the one who opened the door of her own will, sitting in that carriage on that June morning, felt this. This story had begun with an arrangement. It ended with a choice. And the choice had always been hers. Thank you for staying with the story through to its very end. Be sure to share in the comments which city you're listening from. We truly enjoy seeing where our audience is across the world. If you enjoyed the story, we would sincerely appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to continue creating and sharing more stories like this.